and watching some of these really high level illustrative style tattooers who are doing like this visual storytelling and stuff like that, I see that that's kind of the stuff that's separating them from people who are just doing what I've always done and what it sounds like you do, where we're just kind of like, I know I want this piece here, I know I want this piece here, and then I'll just draw to connect it. The kind of prep work that they're putting in to visualizing how it's actually going to sit on the body on the front end really is making a huge difference, I think.
So that's actually that's actually something that I went over with a couple of guys from the RIT group and my method of sleeve layout. And I've got it down to like, you know, pretty much a standard method for how I lay everything out. I'll give you an example as far as, you know, just the way that I personally do things. You know, not that I'm on like Andy Chambers kind of level or anything like that, but.
Me neither, man.
Let's see, where was the one example that I used?
Pretty rocking too, Jason. The way you do it.
Yeah, it was just, you know, it's been my methodology for a while. So this is actually a full sleeve I did, and I'll go through and hide all the layers and whatnot that I have in here.
Yeah, I love that layout. It looks great.
But so I essentially start off, and I'll go through and measure the whole arm, right? I'll take a flexible measuring tape, a tailor's measure, and I'll measure, you know, actually, let's pull up a new layer. So I'll actually measure maximum height, top and bottom, you know, on the outside of the arm. And I know this one was going on the guy's left arm, so I don't really have to think about that all too much because I know that all of my direction is going to be focused in this way. I'll go through and measure it widthwise all the way around, plot that out in Procreate by using the assisted drawing guide. And then that way I know the maximum limits to where everything goes, right? Because that's the circumference of the arm. Mm-hmm. Well, the way that I ended up doing this, let's see, where did I put those layers? I hate it when I lose layers. I think there was one more that I had. Yeah. So one thing I always try to remember is like where my muscle structures are, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'll make sure that I remember that, hey, where everyone's arm kind of scrunches in at the sides, that's going to be my elbow spot, right? So I know that whole area right there. I know I'm going to have the knot of the elbow, like the actual elbow bone right around here, because that usually lines up pretty parallel with the interior right by where the armpit is. So I know the corresponding area is going to be the ditch of the elbow, not a very fun spot, obviously. That's going to be over in this area. You know, outer upper arm plane is going to be in this spot, you know, and then you always want to try to focus a little bit on that inner arm area, just like Andy Chambers was mentioning. So I always try to put something nice and flowing, like a nice flowing, you know, shape over in that area so that as they turn their arm, you have complementary subject matter as well, so that no matter what way you view it from, it's going to be an interesting composition. I always try to go beyond those bounds because I know that if I go past this spot, that's going to come in past this spot on this side, kind of fill up that space.
Right.
So I always try to leave a little bit of negative space. In this case, I just added some quick wind bars in there. And it wraps around so that there's interesting subject matter in all locations. Everything looks nice and cohesive, but you have to remember that, you know, if anything goes outside these lines, that's when it starts to come back in over on this side, you know, and maybe it'll overlap. Maybe you tuck it behind an element. Maybe you tuck it behind a subject matter. In this case with the rocks, these waves lined up perfectly, crashing out from behind the rocks. That continues this forward motion. Like I said, over here, I think I had like maybe an inch worth of space in between the dragon body on each side. Just kind of threw some wind bars or some wave bars in there. But otherwise, I hit all the major muscle groups, your deltoid, your tricep, your bicep area, you know, all those nice intricate forearm muscles. and then having these coming through and crashing up on the back of the arm while still avoiding, you know, your elbow bone, which no one likes getting tattooed that I know of. And there's not going to be too much complicated stuff on the inside of the elbow here. So, like I said, it's just kind of my method on going through and doing it so that way everything lays out nice and cohesively. And I don't have to spend my time, you know, drawing on the client. They can come in, I can print it out to scale, stencil it, tape it together, and start tattooing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like that. You're hitting all the main kind of landmarks and where everything is. I'm trying to draw out a little something here that's similar, but using kind of a generic tracing that would be basically the same thing. Let me change mine. Yeah, that hits all of the major landmarks. The one other consideration that Andy brought up to me, let me see if I can go back to this. Okay, is let's zoom out on this just slightly so everybody can see. There we go. All right, so let's say this is a left arm. You can see my pointer.
Yep.
All right, so same idea. If this were just, and this isn't proportional, but it's just a quick generic kind of tracing. If this is a left arm, you know, right up here, I've got basically the top of the shoulder,
right.
You know, the little point of the shoulder. I always kind of lay out a square for the elbow and a plus for the ditch, and then a little circle that shows just how much of that elbow skin is elbow skin. You know what I mean? Around the elbow, it's like the whole kind of elbow area. And then down here are the bones at the end of the finger, and something that are at the end of the hand, these little kind of wrist bones, right down at the bottom.
Right.
And something that Andy pointed out is, let me switch back to my other camera view for a second. There we go. So something that Andy pointed out is if you went from like I don't know if I showed the notches of the you saw the two little these two little guys.
Lines.
These little guys right here are basically the front and back of the armpit. So if you went from the front of the armpit to the ditch, and then the ditch to this bone, it's basically a straight line. It's pretty well a straight line. And then you can say the same thing about the back of the armpit to the elbow to this bone. It's basically a straight line. So and they might be slightly different from person to person. This inner little notch right here, that's the dead center of the armpit on the inside. So that's the middle of the armpit. So you kind of draw a little wedge shape there. And to his point, the reason that he does it this way is not only the importance of these lines isn't just that they, you know, that they line up and that they hit these landmarks, but it's also where the tattoo breaks the line of sight. So if you know, really this area back here is kind of the it's like a little flat that's pretty useless. It's almost never seen unless you do this kind of stuff. And so the reason he does these little like notches like this is as a reminder of whatever is going out here is doing this here. So it's like that's the interlocking piece. And so it's just these little things are kind of like reminders for that. And so like if, for example, if you're drawing like, you know, maybe a snake head or something like that, and the head sits right on the front of the arm, you might want to draw it in a way where it changes direction, where this, you know, where the eye here is right at that, at where it breaks the line of sight, and then the head's going back on the other side, so that you're using the natural contours of the body to relate to the to the shape that you're trying to create, so that you're like, so that the body is lending itself to the actual shape of the object that you're trying to represent. If that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense, dude. And like, not only does that line from the armpit from the front and in the back line up, it like one of the things that I've always done is draw a straight line across it too. You know what I mean? You can kind of start breaking down these like intersecting lines that kind of would angle down through the whole cohesive piece, or underline like construction for the image. You know what I mean? And then that line also tapers down to the wrist like you're talking about. It does go straight, but there's always that little taper and almost like a wave, right? That tricep and bicep area too. And then the other thing that I'll do is I'll circle the ditch as well, and then the armpit or the elbow, and I make a cross line to kind of intersect to show like where it does angle and the way it wraps around too. you know, and that's like a lot better. I've always tried to draw like a bigger tattoos without the tracing, and you can tell how it's going to be off. You know what I mean? Like a chest panel and a half sleeve, like this one. Like if you were actually trying to lay that down on somebody without the tracing, you can tell like how far over this forehead and that horn is actually going to be on the chest. Like it would be so far forward on the front of the shoulder that it wouldn't look right. You know what I mean? Like if you were to actually lay it down like that. So those tracings help out a lot, dude. And like you and Jason both are like spot on with all that stuff too.